We are back and time for us to take a look at the markets. The rand is firmer today after pushing to a 5-month high against the dollar this week, and it was lifted by news that dovish U.S. Federal Reserve policy is on the way. Meanwhile, on the local front, Public Investment Corporation, the PIC, had offered to convert 90 billion rand of the debt owed to it by Eskom into equity. So much has been happening in the world of business. So let's take a look at some of the highlights of the week with Owen Nokomo of Inkunzi Investments. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, sir, for having me.
All right. Converting debt into equity by PIC, is this really a strategic move or just a desperate attempt to be afloat?
There's many ways to look at it, Colin, and I think that we have to ask ourselves a lot of questions around why Eskom should get this assistance from the PIC. This is people's pensions, and when you take money and you invest it in a share, you're expecting to get paid dividends. So is it a possibility that anyone who invests in Eskom in an equity structure will get paid back? It's very difficult to figure out, especially given the fact that Eskom cannot satisfactorily collect the amount of cash they are owed by their current creditors. Talking about Soweto, 18 billion, and the rest of the people that owe Eskom money. So from a responsibility perspective, when you're looking after pensioners' monies, you always want to take that money and put it in the best investments. So the question to ask, an important one, is it very wise to invest in Eskom? But then again, if you flip the coin, you ask the question, does Eskom have any other choice? Does the PIC themselves have any other choice, since they're holding the biggest amount of bonds in Eskom? Maybe this is a consideration that is being made in light of that, to say if we don't give Eskom if we don't convert our debt to equity, we're just making it more difficult for Eskom to raise capital. Maybe if we could agree on a period that the conversion could happen, and after that maybe we switch it back to debt with the right returns, maybe that's an option to look at. But at this stage, I think that it's quite a difficult one. I think there will be a lot of people that will challenge this approach.
Things have not been looking good for the steel industry this week. ArcelorMittal shedding 2,000 jobs.
Yes, I mean it's difficult. I mean there's like 20 big companies that are shedding jobs out there. The economy is tough. It's I don't think that as a country we're addressing it as urgently as is possible. This engine called economic growth, and we need to be doing that quite urgently. Otherwise, we're going to see more people losing jobs. Arcelor used to be a big counter. It's fallen in value quite significantly from the early 2000s, and I think that it's not a good sign for people wanting to come and invest in the country.
On the international front, it's quite concerning that Deutsche Bank as well is letting go of 18,000 employees. This is quite massive.
It is a big number. And it's Deutsche Bank was a big engine. I mean, say a decade ago, 2 decades ago, it was one of the biggest investment banks in the world. They're competing with JP Morgan and Citigroup and Solomon Smith Barney before they collapsed during the financial crisis. So, it's a sign of the fact that these companies, if they grow too big, if they assume too much debt, and if they're not nimble enough to change when the environment is changing, this is always going to happen with them. Deutsche Bank in South Africa was shutting down their offices last year, and I'm not surprised that because of what's happening in the UK, it'll be difficult to keep the Deutsche Bank or Deutsche Securities brand going in the country. But it's a sign of the times we're living in. Things are very difficult at the moment for the financial services companies.
So when we look on the local front, the JSE has really been under pressure throughout this week. Why were some of the shares in the red? And of course, what's your interpretation of the current opening since the morning up until now, where you see the rand being off the 14 rand mark as well?
Yeah, so the biggest driver this week has been the strength of the currency. Our rand has strengthened from, call it 14.50 about 2 weeks ago to about 14 when we started this week, and it's currently at 14.19. So remember that there's a very big component of the JSE, which is foreign companies that earn money in hard currencies, your euros, your dollars, your pounds. And when the rand strengthens, the earnings on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange go lower than where they were when the currency was weaker. It's just a currency conversion thing. So that's the first point where the currencies have gone down, or rather the market has gone down. But it's also important to remember that the Fed has started to indicate strongly in the USA that they are going to be reducing interest rates. And if they reduce interest rates, emerging markets bonds start to be attractive. And guys go and buy these bonds because the Americans are reducing interest rates. And that also filters through into the currency, which has strengthened rather this week, resulting in the JSE losing a little bit of ground.
Okay, let's talk about the interesting tweet from Donald Trump about Bitcoin.
Which one? He tweets every day.
Yeah, Bitcoin.
Oh, so yes. So the Bitcoin, I saw a tweet today that he's saying if people want to play in Bitcoin, if people want to play in cryptocurrencies, if Facebook wants to play in Libra, which is another cryptocurrency, they must expect to be regulated. He's insisting that there must be regulation in the cryptocurrency space. But if you think about it, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and a few other cryptocurrencies, thousands in fact, that have a similar pattern and functionality as Bitcoin, they thrive on the fact that there is no regulation in that space, and importantly, there's no one who you can point your finger to when something goes wrong. So that anonymity is very attractive to some people out there, but unfortunately, the bad guys jump on the bandwagon. They start to use the system for the wrong reasons. You know, even if the intentions of using Bitcoin are good, the fact that it can be used for illicit transactions is the one that concerns countries, and indeed Donald Trump is rightfully concerned.
Are we going to see a chicken run in that, where people will be running and having Bitcoin a no-go area?
Now, unfortunately, Donald Trump changes his mind quite regularly. you know what's happening with this decision on Huawei as a phone. He has allowed it to be marketed in the USA a month after he said he doesn't want that to happen. So he might just change his mind as well on Bitcoin. And if you look at the price of Bitcoin today, it hasn't come down. I think it will take time before people decide to sell off Bitcoin aggressively, because I think it's all about how many people believe in the use of Bitcoin and how long the story can sustain itself. Remember, there's nothing backing Bitcoin. If you compare Bitcoin to the use of normal currency is backed by foreign reserves and by gold in some instances. But for Bitcoin, it's just you and me trusting that we are good people and we're going to continue to be good to each other.
Okay, your parting shot. Do we have any imminent recession globally?
This one is difficult to say, because we're moving into an interest rate environment which is even more accommodative than it has been in the past 2 years. If the Americans start reducing interest rates, South Africa will also reduce interest rates, and I think that will continue to support share prices that are elevated, that are really high. I don't think there's any systemic risk in the system that says something is going to go wrong and the markets will crash. We potentially might see a few more years of the market staying where they are. But then again, you know what happens with recessions? They don't announce themselves when they come. You know when the recession has hit.
Right. Thank you very much for your insightful analysis.
Thank you so much, sir.
Right.